What's up, everybody? Donnie DiMato here, and welcome back to Codecast Live. And today is going to be a final day for 2019 for me here at Codecast. Basically, the idea is that I'm going to take the month of December off from doing these videos just to reflect on what I've done, basically the format and the content, and basically I'm trying to make this thing better. So I'm going to basically take all the videos that I made this year, which is actually like for half the year. I think I started somewhere in summer, and now it's like winter. So maybe like a third of the year, just. But it's a lot of videos. So I'm going to reflect on these videos and see how I can improve and things like that. But there is going to be some content today, and today we're actually not going to be coding. We're actually going to be talking about the information architecture of your site, and we're going to be talking specifically about making like a personal site that displays like your work or your resume or just parts about you. It's a nice like landing page for people to go to if they need to find out stuff about you. So I've actually coded a whole bunch of stuff up already previous to kind of like set this up, but we can go to CodePen here, and you can see I just have some HTML here, which is just bullet points, and the link is down below for the same thing here. But basically, I've outlined over on this side here, which is a little bit more readable, what a content hierarchy might be for your website. Now, again, this is going to be for like a personal website for a person who's a professional that wants to showcase their work and their resume in a way that you could potentially contact them. So information architecture doesn't necessarily need to be a one-for-one representation of what your navigation would be. But it's more or less like the kinds of content that you would have in your site, and you would want to fill out each one of these like spots appropriately based on like the type of work that you do. I'm going to be talking about from a design and a developer's kind of point of view. I could do both the same because that's kind of what my role has been for the past couple of years, and let's kind of get into it here. So the first thing is there's this homepage thing here, right? And your homepage is, of course, exactly where people would land if they didn't, have any other navigation in your site. It's basically as soon as you click, you find them on Google or you find it through a business card or wherever. That's basically where you would land. Now your homepage could be any other one of these pages. It could be your about page, or it could have the content from your about section about you on the homepage, or it could be a page that they land on initially that's all about your work, and then there's a separate about page that if you want to read more about the person, it's like somewhere else. It could be a resume or even your blog. It could be a list of articles that you've written, and then if you want to learn more about the work that you've done, then maybe there's a separate section for that. So I've outlined a couple of different things here that would be probably a good starting point, or maybe additions that you would have to your site potentially. And you would fill out each one of these things and determine like what needs to go in there. Like maybe your about is not, when you were born, but more so about everything that pertains to the work that you do currently. So like for me, maybe I'll talk about me making these videos and being creative and wanting to go ahead and teach people about this kind of stuff. Maybe I would talk about the about there. In the blog, maybe I have posts about the different kinds of things that I do professionally here. I'd probably stay away from more personal things on this site, but if that's your kind of thing, then you could totally do that. But I like to keep the personal things in like social media, like privacy places, so it's only for like friends or people I'm close with, and the public stuff is more professional related stuff. You'll notice that I have stuff that's in like parentheses here, and that's these are like alternatives. Instead of you having to build out these pages, you might want to consider just using like LinkedIn, for instance, instead of having a contact form or putting your email address there. You might want to just have a link to LinkedIn for people to contact you for jobs or contract work or whatever. And I actually started doing this recently. So for two reasons. Number one, I didn't want to have my email address on my site because I didn't want like bots to pick it up and then start emailing me and spamming me and stuff. And then the other thing is if you put a contact form on your page, first off, you may need to have like a back end kind of server to manage that, which is a little bit tricky. Or even if you use a service that creates your contact form for you, there's definitely people out there that don't want to fill out a form to contact you. They might want to feel more comfortable in a place where I guess contacting is more familiar. So like a messaging place, like an email or LinkedIn messaging or what have you. I think those things are a little bit more appropriate than trying to put your own form there because then you have to worry about accessibility and things like that. So if you just link them to a place that handles all that for you, it's probably a lot easier. But there's nothing stopping you from, of course, making your own contact form. I also say the same kind of thing for blogs. I think Medium does a really good job of kind of handling articles, especially professional articles. So it kind of doesn't make sense for you to try to build your own unless you really want to and you think it's important to your brand, your personal brand. Building a blog itself is actually a pretty big endeavor because you'll have to deal with like a database and posts and that kind of stuff. So I again recommend going and just linking to Medium for anything that you have in terms of articles. But again, if you want to go ahead and build it yourself, you totally can. Now, these two things, work and resume, these are also things that you can go ahead and link out to different sites. But there's also a balance about the number of things that you would link out away from your site versus the number of things that you keep in your site. So think about like if your homepage is only one page, it should be really I think it should be really impressive, showing off all the things that you could do both in the design and the development world. And then you could link out to like your GitHub for your work or LinkedIn for your resume if you like. But if you're a creative person or you want to go ahead and go the extra mile, then building out your resume in your actual website is a pretty cool idea. Just make sure that you have print styles. And that just basically means that when you print out your web page, that particular page, to make sure that it actually looks good when you print it out on a printer, because people will print your resume and file it and otherwise want to refer to it potentially during interviews. So it's also really helpful to have your resume there instead of having it in a lot of different places like Google Drive or locally on your computer. If you just have it on your website, you can access it practically anywhere, and then just print it out right from the web, right in front of them, and they could have it. So instead of having to log into something, it's just like, boom, your resume is right there. Here you go, take it and enjoy. So going back to the work thing, you see work I've laid out a whole bunch of other stuff for, and you can see that each piece of work I say something about telling a story. And I think that's the big important thing about showing off your work is like, why did you do this work? What was the benefit of you taking the time, the money, the effort, the resources to do this thing? And I outlined a couple extra bullet points in here that I kind of just made up on the fly. There was no research really behind this. This is really just from my experience and what I would do if I was going to go ahead and really beef up my site, because my site's only, again, like really one page right now. But if I was going to put some more work into it, I would do this kind of thing where each piece of work, I would have a summary about the piece of work. Then I would state what the problem was, what thing I was trying to solve for this particular, endeavor, and then I would find pieces of inspiration about how I would attack this thing. Then this thing called ideation, which is trying to create ideas that I would use from the inspiration and the problem, and kind of like wireframe stuff almost. And that's kind of going into the prototypes version. And then I want to like outline what the challenges were in that process, because that's when you're really, trying to like tweak things and turn knobs and hit levers to try to figure out like why hasn't anyone solved this problem before? Like, what are the actual challenges that you learned through this process, right? And then you're going to go ahead and maybe show your final result, and even maybe saying what the next steps were if you had more time or if you had more knowledge in a particular area, and show that you want to, you have ways of learning more out there. And I think this telling the story about each piece of work is going to be really important for people who are interested in potentially working with you or hiring you in some future. And this is not an exhaustive list. This is also not a list that, again, I think I said earlier, that needs to be your navigation, but it could definitely work as some of your navigation. Even like, going into work, and then this work thing is like an overview of all your pieces of work, and you click maybe work number one here, and you go into all the details about that piece of work. Or maybe you don't have like an overview page, and it's just like individual pieces of work that talk about this story. But I think the story is super important in this whole process. So anyway, that's the general gist of kind of how I would outline the information architecture for my personal site if I was going to go ahead and beef it up, which I probably will in some near future, because now I've talked about this outline, I should probably put my code where my mouth is and actually do this kind of thing. So maybe during this December, I'll actually maybe do a nice little redesign with some more content in there, and kind of show you what comes out of this. But for the rest of the year, enjoy 2019, and I will see you folks in 2020. Later.